All right, we're back for another episode of the Exertis Almo ProAV podcast. Today, we're going to talk about Directv LED products. Now, I'd like to be an expert of all things, but I have to admit sometimes stuff's above my head. So why not bring an expert on when it comes to LED? So I've got a special guest on the show today, Bruce Moses, the Senior Account Manager of dvLED products for LG. And he's going to be here to help us kind of discuss dvLED. Why, how, what for, what's it doing, all the fun parts. Okay, so with that being said, Bruce, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
Good. Me too. LED is fun. I really love this because it's one of these technologies that I've sort of watched for, ever since I had a light bright and I could sort of emulate pixels, right? And then you look at things like Times Square and, LED is used all over there. LED is not a new technology, but I feel like in the last sort of 3 to 5 years, it's hit an affordability and a feasibility where you can now sort of put it anywhere. So, it's sort of become the go-to product now if you're doing any kind of new build or replacement. So let's talk about that a second. Like, where are you seeing this product fall right now?
Well, I think it's a shorter answer to say, where are we not seeing the application of the product? Just like you said, it's a technology that's been around for decades, but now with the affordability and the flexibility and range of product and pixel sizes, we can literally apply it in almost any application. So whether it's still from Times Square all the way down to super high-end home theater, we're seeing Directv being applied.
Now, so you said pixel sizes, and that one's really important because I think sometimes people sort of take for granted, you buy a TV, you know exactly how many pixels are in it, right? It's like, I bought a 1080p TV, I bought a 4K, and hopefully one day I'll get an 8K. But in the meantime, LED is done differently, right? Because it's effectively panels and each panel has pixels. Talk to me a little bit about pixel pitch and what people should know or understand with pixel pitch.
Right. And you're exactly right. So it's pretty much like Legos, right? You can build these displays any size you really want. As I tell people, there's really two limiters. One is cost and your imagination on what you can build. We still have a lot of applications that are our standard 16:9 aspect ratios, 2K, 4K resolutions, because a lot of our sources output that very conveniently. The part that shifts things for Directv is then we're adding another dimension, which is pixel pitch. What is the size of each individual pixel or dot on that display? And what drives that? And most people will say, well, I want 4K. In Directv, the conversation really shifts to how close is that nearest viewer? What is the content you're putting on the wall? And that's going to start to drive the pixel pitch or the overall resolution more than anything else. Simple rules of thumb that we use is 5 feet per pixel pitch for a minimum viewing distance. So let's say I've got a 2.0 pixel pitch. I really don't want to be any closer than 10 feet to that wall before it starts to look kind of weird and I can see the pixels. At what we call an ideal viewing spot, which is 10 feet per pixel pitch, it starts to look like film. So if you start to use that other component into how you're designing a wall, and there's some mitigating circumstances on how that works, but that's a good rule of thumb to dictate how many pixels do I need to see to make the wall look right.
Yeah, it's sort of a math game, right? Because as you adjust those pixels, the amount of overall pixels you have to fit the space changes. That number might go up, might go down. So you may end up with a less than 4K wall, but it would look better than a traditional 4K TV or even projection at that distance because of it's all based on what our eyes can relatively see.
Correct. And it's something that people overlook frequently. They'll say, well, I have to have it as the highest pixel pitch as I can get. And then I'll ask, how close is the nearest viewer? And they go, 30 feet. So they've actually wanted to spec a wall that's, 30 feet wide, and it would be a, 24K resolution and cost millions of dollars, and they'd be basically wasting pixels. Yeah. So you end up at something that's maybe a 6.9 pixel pitch, and works perfectly fine and appears like film to the closest viewer.
Yeah, that's the amazing part. Because everybody wants to go to high resolution, right? Everybody wants, like, why would I put in a 1080p TV right now when 4K is sort of the norm now?
Mm-hmm.
And I hear that often with LED. It's like, I want to go straight to the highest pixel, and then they see the price and they go, well, can we talk about something else? It's
Yep.
that price thing kind of comes in, but let's talk about price for a second, because I think one of the things that always held LED back was the cost, right? And it feels like, there's this inflection point now where we're seeing the cost become more affordable to where, I mean, to me, it still seems sometimes more expensive than a flat panel wall, but you're losing seams, the mounting infrastructure is better, you're dealing with one input to the whole wall. So suddenly those cost factors kind of make it more necessary to, or even optimal to move to LED.
Yeah, and at this point, we're
Talk to
actually
me a little bit
flipping
about
that whole conversation. It is now less expensive to go with a Directv LED simply to say replace a 3x3 55-inch LCD video wall. We've got an amazing 136-inch all-in-one product, which actually comes in a single flight case with everything you need, including the mount, that by the time you factor in install and just ease of use, life of the product, its price is less than a 3x3 video wall. So it really has now changed the whole conversation where people are going, I'm going to go this direction and I don't need that 3x3 video wall and all the maintenance headaches and tuning and trying to image calibrate a 3x3 LCD wall.
Yeah, that's one thing most folks don't think about. Like, if one panel goes out on that LED, video wall, you have to replace that panel, and the question is that panel going to have the same color value? Is it going to look the same, or is it always going to stand out, right?
And how many people do I need to deploy to do that? Because it's generally like the middle panel, so I've got to do a whole bunch of, it's going to take a day to take that bad panel out, put a new panel in, and calibrate it. We're literally on a Directv LED wall. If I've got one module that goes out, I could have one person go out there in the span of 5 minutes, they've replaced it with their spare, and they're up and running.
Yeah, there's one other piece to that one too, which I try to coach people through. Video walls require processors or processing to share the source correctly through all the flat panels so that everything shows up where it is. And with a Directv LED wall, it's one source feeding the wall, right? And so it just simplifies sort of the infrastructure side of that, especially if you're doing like a Crestron system or something where you got to feed each individual panel. This sort of cleans up the overall look.
And even like with our 136-inch all-in-one, the processor's built into the back of the unit itself. So it's literally like just a giant 136-inch display.
So one piece I really like about your all-in-one is the OS. And I think this is a piece that people sometimes miss. And again, is what am I using to drive the wall? How am I viewing content? Do I need a processor sitting in front of it? Because you've got that processor in there. You also have WebOS built into this. Talk to me a little about that application, what it is. Because I think people might be familiar with it if they have an LG TV at home, but they may not realize it's available on the commercial side as well.
Right, and you bring up a good point. When most people go, what is WebOS? And I don't understand it. And then I can just point out, well, at your TV at home, when you go and see Netflix and Amazon Prime and these different apps, that's all running WebOS. So it is basically a built-in operating system on board the display that allows you to access different apps. And that's all translated over to the commercial world with our WebOS, where we can have, I think right now we're up to about 70 plus partners who have developed apps for WebOS for things like menu boarding, for digital signage, for wayfinding. You've got health statistics and analytics you can pull back. It's an open architecture, so you've got the ability to get massive amounts of data back about the display and control the display. And I think one thing I think is important and a big differentiator when we just escape, just a pure Directv LED conversation is what is LG doing that's kind of different is we're putting that same WebOS and interface technology in all our Directv controllers, so you've got one seamless experience across the platform. So whether you're setting up one of our 75-inch commercial LCD displays or a Directv LED wall, you're getting that same interface, that same ability to access the WebOS, the same ability to get health data back about the display and manage it remotely. So a huge benefit in terms of one platform to deploy across your organization.
Well, and it truly turns that, even if it's just the all-in-one or whatever with the LED product, which of the LG products you choose, it truly treats it like a TV now. right? Where we don't have to, we don't have to think of like, well, how am I going to get content onto it? Well, here's an app environment. Everybody loves their apps, right?
Yes. And the fact that you can run content natively. You don't even have to have a source. You can just feed content or a web feed or whatever you want to play out of that device itself. And it's one less point of failure. I think a lot of times in the industry now, we're trying to remove boxes and points of failure.
So it seems to me it's sort of become the optimal thing to do in the conference room, right? Because there's that, a TV can get about 90 or 100 inches, about the biggest TV I'm seeing, but it's extremely heavy. It's very delicate. There's a lot of ways it could be damaged. I can go to projection, but then I'm dealing with a big noisy projector above my head, where LED has sort of become that sweet spot of, well, now how big do I want it to be? Because as you mentioned earlier, it is Legos effectively, right?
Yep.
So we can now sort of exceed and expand and create a conference room experience that is, a little more premier experience without having seams or projectors. But there's a change happening in sort of the conference space, and I wanted to talk to you about it. We actually been talking about it on this show a lot, and that's 21:9 aspect ratio. What is LG doing to kind of bounce into that space, and how are they affecting the 21:9 ecosystem, so to speak?
Great question, and one I actually get asked frequently. And without getting into too much trouble, I would say that we are deep down that path of 21:9 aspect ratio for multiple products. One of the benefits of Directv LED is it's very easy to change aspect ratios and sizes because of the Lego kind of way to put these together. So we have been doing a lot with that aspect ratio so that people can incorporate things like Teams Front Row, which is a big driver of why we want that 21:9 aspect ratio. We want more content so the far end participants can be more equitable in their size in the room, and you've got more of a larger canvas to put that shared content up. So it's very easy to accomplish with Directv LED. And one of the big benefits is there's some projection solutions out that are short throw. They kind of put the projector on the floor. It eats up 5 or 6 feet of the room, so they can't really use that room for anything else. With Directv, we can put up a wall that maybe it's a 32:9 aspect ratio, so they have the ability to split it into two 16:9 screens or a dedicated 21:9 screen, but they aren't losing any square footage of that space. They can reconfigure the room, they can move the conference table around, they can switch it for just doing front row Teams calls. It gives them a lot more flexibility.
There's also a piece of that I think people sometimes miss, which is you need a camera, right? And typically that camera is up above, below, or near the screen. And when you're dealing with projection like that, you end up hitting the lens with light. And it creates some issues. So the concept of doing this with LED means your light's coming from behind or above the camera, not in front of it the way a projector would. So it definitely makes for a better camera experience if we're doing something like front row.
And bringing up light, and I think this is important when we talk about LEEDs buildings, right? Everyone's trying to get a 5-star LEEDs building and they want to do all these things that are energy efficient. There's one important factor that people kind of are missing is light harvesting. So one of the big things people are driving at is bringing in more and more natural light into a space, so they have to reduce the amount of actual physical lighting they've got to do. Well, that creates a problem for the traditional projector, is you now have rooms with a lot more windows that are flooding natural light in, which means either you're going to spend a lot of money on very expensive shades, or you're going to have to spend a ton of money for a very bright projector. One of the benefits of Directv is it's naturally much brighter than a projector because it's a direct light source. So you can have a lot of ambient natural light in a space and still have a display that you can see without any problems. So, even when we talk about now these displays being more of an architectural element, it feeds really well into being more energy efficient and harvesting natural light.
So I think that's a good shift point, is architectural, right? I mean, I sort of, that was one of the early places we saw LED going, right? It was billboards and it was outdoor displays, and then it's kind of moved into lobbies and, all these other environments. Casinos are obviously a big piece of this right now. And you and I were talking about this previously. Talk to me a little bit about the, sort of sports books and why they're attaching to LED.
Yeah, one of the biggest kind of rapid growth areas we're seeing is this, sports book betting locations, because now it's legal outside of Vegas. People are building them in all these different states. So they're creating an environment where you have to have a huge canvas so you can watch 12 football games at one time. So you can watch your game watch the odds, do your betting. And so you need a very dynamic, flexible display that can cover all those things. The other thing we're seeing is unique applications of that technology, because now let's say you want to go to the bar to get a drink, but you still want to see what's going on. We've done a casino on the East Coast where the actual bar itself has an oval wrap around the hung above it. And so that you can see what's going on in the games from the outside. But if you're actually sitting at the bar, you now can't see that because it's directly over your head. So the solution was to wrap the inside with Directv as well, so that if you're sitting at the bar, you can look up and see inside of the oval and still have the same content. So this is one of those applications where you can get very creative with how you build a display to kind of meet the use case and what the patrons want to see.
Yeah, no, I think that's that creativity that lends to this product being moved into other areas as well, say like museums and sort of entertainment venues. There's an interesting case study, and we're going to post the link here in the system. But Georgia's Tellus Science Museum and how they're using LED, sort of to take over the kiosk outside the theater and use that for more of a digital signage application. Are you seeing that become sort of the next venue for LED, taking over the old, digital signage deployments of flat panels and even OLED screens to become more LED screens?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely are. If you look at places like museums where people want to be very creative with content and actually virtual displays where you're not bringing in the real artwork, that maybe it's actually being shown on the displays themselves, wayfinding, interactive capability using haptics and other kind of technology, those are all happening pretty quickly. Everything from those applications to the VR and the sound stage is moving to Directv LED. So literally the number of applications are almost endless at this point.
Well, and it's unique because with flat panels, we're sort of stuck in a very specific shape and size, right? It's like, okay, here's the shape of our flat panel, here's the sizes of them. With LED, you can, because again, they're created with smaller cubes or Legos, we can create unique shapes, create unique patterns with those. And so from an entertainment standpoint, we can create more relevant visual displays that would make a museum stand out, right? That would allow you to customize.
Exactly. And even outside of the Lego analogy, we have the ability to curve, convex, concave. We have the ability to make it transparent. We've got an amazing transparent product that attaches directly to glass. And when it's not on, you can see through it. When it's energized, you can put content up on that wall, floor applications. You kind of imagine it. I think right now, currently, we have about 24 different product families of Directv LED. And inside of each one of those are multiple different pixel pitches. So there's a lot of things to choose from.
LG is truly the king of things flexible displays, right? I mean, going back to, there was a display at the LG booth years ago at Infocom where it was the waves and it was OLED displays kind of wrapped over your head. I mean, it's sort of been your space for years to curve or flex that display. And so it doesn't surprise me in the LED world that it just fits right in. So you mentioned the transparent one. Talk to me a little bit about that. That's, to me, is really interesting as a product.
Yeah. It is a very interesting product. So it is a very large pixel pitch. So it's a 14 millimeter pixel pitch because you have to have those pixels far enough apart that you still get the ability to see through the product. And it's actually embedded into a resin film that you peel off one side of it and it adheres straight to the glass. Each film has individual, almost invisible little wire leads that go to each pixel. Those end up at a bezel. Each sheet's roughly 26 by 20 inches. And then as you attach them to the bezels, that provides power and data to each sheet, which then you can send content to. And it's fun from a content creation standpoint, which is an interesting topic in and of itself, is how do we then create content for all these unique applications of displays where they can put up graphics and some text, so to speak, but you've got to realize you've got this 14 millimeter very large pixel pitch that makes it impactful from a great distance, but you've got to have a big enough canvas to be able to actually see what you're doing. So it's really a retail branding, used a lot in large conference areas where there's a lot of glass and you want to make the room hard to see inside of. You can energize the wall, have some branding, logo content, and so you can't see in, and then when it's off, you can see the room. It's very flexible.
That's interesting. Producer Jordan's going to put some photos up for the audience to kind of see what we're talking about. And I think this is really interesting because it's almost Minority Report-esque in the concept of having things appear in the air. Where are you seeing this sort of being deployed out of the gate? Is this more of a digital signage solution? Talk to us about how some of the clients are using this.
Primarily, it's going to be a retail application. So it might be a mall where you have large glass storefronts where you can put kind of branding information up, some, very simple graphics, fall sale and some images. Or it's also being used a lot in large corporate enterprise where you have a large space in a building where you've got a lot of glass that they want to energize. So the product's very bright. You can view it from the outside. We can be up to over 2,000 nits of brightness. So very viewable from the outside. Lots of creative applications for it.
So this is a product that you really are looking at from 100 feet away. Or,
Correct.
150 feet away. So it's designed to be something which then, as you mentioned, changes sort of the type of content you would build for it, larger, blockier graphics or big text. It would, be interesting to see how this is used. And
so the federal government is one of the largest consumers of displays, in the world. And especially in recent years, this whole concept of being TAA compliant, which really means that there are no components made from countries that the U.S. government hasn't stamped as approved to produce products that are going to be secure as a finished good. So it's either going to come as manufactured in the United States or other countries which have TAA approval. So we have multiple products that meet that requirement, and as this is becoming almost more predominant now, outside of just secure control rooms or certain military applications, you're seeing a broader spec saying, look, we want this to be TA compliant product, that we have more and more products that meet that requirement. It has nothing to do per se with the technology itself. It's more the origin of the technology and the chips and where they come from.
Where it's being assembled and shipped.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that, and this is a requirement on GSA contracts, on bid specs. So it's one of those pieces where it's good to know that there's a product that can answer that without a lot of paperwork.
Yeah, and especially in the Directv LED world, we're even seeing people go outside of that a bit, because a lot of these companies are owned in where the majority of these parts are being manufactured, where with LG being a Korean-based company that is on the TAA compliant country list, there's a lot of benefit there in and of itself. And people are saying, hey, what is the company and who owns this company is becoming part of the conversation.
So from a dealer perspective, what does LG offer to enable dealers to be successful with LED?
Great question. So what we've done is kind of built several different layers of things we can do to support them. First off is in the design of these systems. What I do when I go out and teach one of our partners about the product offerings we have is tell them, hey, I'm your resource. Reach out to me. I've got 5 counterparts like myself across the country, and we're there to help educate you, design that system, make sure it's spec'd properly, and that you get it awarded. From that point, we also have a deployment team that has guided install that we provide with our walls, where we're actually sending an LG technician to the site. We're having a pre-site visit call to make sure all the prep work is done, and they're there to assist and train your team on how to install a Directv LED wall. In addition to that, we also have a Directv LED University course we've just started at our Lincolnshire location, where you can come and take I think it's a 2-day course to get certified on installing Directv LED. So everything up through follow-up service in our extended warranty package, where we'll provide health checks twice a year, coming out to the wall, making sure it's performing the way it should. So I think we've done a really good job of basically partnering with our partners, so to speak, and helping them be successful at deploying these walls.
And there's a lot of moving pieces with an LED wall. When we talk about a flat panel, it's we got a bracket that hangs on the wall, and we drop our flat panel on there. With an LED wall, there's the backing infrastructure, the mounting infrastructure, and this is not one of these pieces where you can go on mounts.com and find the right mount. It's a very specific mount, a very specific way to hang it, and then pulling all those modules together to make sure they're in line. There's just a lot there, so that training becomes very, very important, right? Or at least that help in the field to ensure that it looks good.
Yeah.
I think that's a big piece of the puzzle here. So it's awesome
And I
that y'all are
think,
doing it.
and that's a great point you bring up. And I think it'll circle back to 136-inch all-in-one, which is a great entry point for anybody doing Directv LED. It's a very unique product. It, again, comes in a single flight case. It's got everything you need, including the wall mount. You can put the wall mount up, and then it's two large cabinets that hang on that mount almost like pictures, and they nest together. And then you populate that with the modules. It's already pre-wired. It's got all the receiving cards and power supplies built into it. And I have literally done a setup of that display at a trade show from opening the flight case to image on the wall in under 2 hours. So it is built to kind of be that great starting and entry point into the world of Directv LED because it's not complicated and you get the principles of it, and then you can build on that from there.
And incidentally, that can't be done with an LCD video wall. It's just...
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's a much, much bigger infrastructure.
Yes.
Okay, so in addition to the all-in-ones, which sort of simplify the deployment, as you were mentioning, the LG has also built some bundles. I think they're called the business display, or perhaps you can enlighten me a little bit what those are.
So those are the ultimate business display bundles. And the 136-inch all-in-one, I kind of joke with people, you can have it in any size you want as long as it's 136 inches, and you can have it in any pixel pitch you want as long as it's 1.5. So that is a set static display that's purpose-built for very quick deployment. The ultimate business display bundles, really now I think we're at over 20 different options, deal with the most common display sizes we see. So they range anywhere from a 0.9 108-inch display all the way up to a 500-plus inch ultra stretch, which is a 32:9 aspect ratio. They cover indoor and outdoor applications. So what they're doing is maintaining a consistent aspect ratio and resolution that means you don't need a lot of custom image processing upstream. Like the all-in-one, they all come in a flight case. They have all the spares included, everything you need. The only exception is there is a mounting solution that's required if you want to use kind of these our partners who build mounts have preset SKUs for a mount solution for these displays as well. Frankly, they're better at bending metal than we are. And the nice part is it's just one SKU from us, one SKU from a mount partner, and you're done. Simple, easy to deploy. And again, like we talked about the services side, these include our on-site service, they include the health checks, they include all your spares, so you're completely covered for these packages.
Yeah, so it makes it real easy, right? It's measure the space, pick the package, and you're up and running.
Exactly.
I think it's great. There's the graphic that is put together, and Jordan can show us the audience. It's very clean, right? Here's the version. Here's how many sizes it comes in. I think it's spectacular. So this is a nice step up when you're ready to move out of the all-in-one into the next phase of your LED enjoyment.
Yeah, and they do cover probably 80% of a lot of the displays that we're asked about can fit into this into one of these bundles.
We started this conversation with, what's good for LED? Where's the right place? And you said almost everywhere. Are there any places where you wouldn't put an LED wall?
A very good question. And yes, there are still places and applications where it does not make sense at this point in time. One of them is a lot of interactive touch applications. We can do touch overlays on Directv LED. It's a little more complex, especially if it's a front serviceable Directv LED product, meaning we'd have to take that touch overlay off to be able to access the panels. But also if you're getting up so close to something where you're touching it and it's a relatively large display, you're going to need a very, very fine pixel pitch to be able to read it from arm's length away. So you've got to think about it in that application. There are still some applications where a projector makes sense. They're becoming fewer and fewer, but if it's very budget driven, you've got total control of light, you don't have to worry about light path issues, as in the people up on the stage getting hit by a laser projector. It still might make some sense in a few of those applications. But those cases are shrinking as each year passes.
Yeah, it seems like the more and more I look, we go to control room spaces. It's time to replace all those flat panels or projectors. Boom, LED. conference rooms with the all-in-ones and the ultra wides LED. So it just seems like everywhere I turn, there's more and more application that sort of scream, why am I doing this any other way than LED? It just makes sense. But you're right. The one thing that people miss on the interactive stuff, do I really want somebody touching the pixels? Do I really want them running their fingers across it? Yeah. So it creates a little bit of an issue there. So, but it's small, non-LED market right now. Other than my house, I haven't.
Yeah. I'm always asked that question. This is great. Can I put it in my house? So
yes, you can.
and it is happening now. We actually have one of our teammates is dedicated to the residential application, and more higher end homes are putting in Directv LED. Comes down again, like we had that conversation about ambient light. People don't want to have a dedicated home theater space where they can make it totally black. They want that large screen theater experience, but they want it in their great room where there's light. And so Directv, foots the bill there every time. Awesome.
Well, Bruce, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you for coming on the show today and, not just sharing what LG is doing, but why LED is such a pivotal piece of technology in the AV space right now. So really appreciate you being here. And I hope to have you on again soon.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
All right. We're going to call this episode of the Exertis Almo ProAV podcast done and in the can. If you want to know more about Directv LED, of course, we've posted some notes here in the show notes and some PDFs you can download. Go to the Almo website and have a look at what they've got, or reach out to Bruce and his team directly to get more info. And we'll see you all on the next episode.